Zdravím decka, dnešnú hodinu som vám nahral na internet, takže pozeráte ju zo záznamu, ako som vám aj napísal. Nezabudnite, že vašou povinnosťou kvôli absenciám je reagovať na otázky, ktoré vám zadávam, takže obidve triedy, aj Cčka, aj Bčka, v piatok a v pondelok máte už zavesené výzvy, kde vám dávam nejakú otázku. Tak ako tradične vás poprosím, aby ste mi reagovali cez reply a odpovedali, pokiaľ sa bude dať. Vždycky váš názor dajte svoj vlastný, prosím vás, na základe nejakých faktov a vysvetlite ho, toto je veľmi dôležitá vec. Dobre, dnešnú hodinu pôjdeme na poslednú tému, ktorú máme v tejto veľkej prezentácii a máte ju aj vo vašich zadaniach vo forme niekoľkých map a sú to krížové výpravy. Tento slajd si prejdeme úplne na konci ako také opakovanie, no ale tiež vychádzam podobne ako tie predtým, vychádzam z prezentácie, ktorú tam máte tiež zavesenú, takže ja pôjdem veľmi rýchlo cez ňu a potom si spravíme takýto prehľad. Odporúčam vám otvoriť si tie vaše mapy vo zadaniach a môžete si už niektoré veci tam vyznačovať, takže dúfam, že to bude jasné. Okay, so I would start for the beginning. So the Crusades in the Middle East. Why in the Middle East? Because despite most of the people imagine Crusades only in Middle East against Arabic or Muslim countries, despite it's not completely true, as you will see, but we know about Crusades also in the Netherlands and so on. Still, these Crusades are actually the first ones, and the idea about military campaign for the religious goals with kind of religious fanaticism is this idea from this period. So in 1095 it starts, and by 1291 these Crusaders armies were present in Middle East, how we call it today, in the territory of Levant. So let's talk about what is this Middle East in here. The basic point, the goal of all these campaigns was Jerusalem, which is today the capital of Israel, of the state of Israel. As you know, that we have mentioned Jerusalem, that it was the capital town, the capital city of a Jewish ancient state called Israel or Canaan, and it was also the seat or founding place for Judaism itself. So it was kind of holy city for Jews and for Hebrew at the same time. Of course, in the 1st century AD, these territories, this kingdom, after being occupied by Persians, Macedonians, then various Hellenistic states, was finally conquered by Romans. And in this period, there was the story of Jesus of Nazareth, who actually founded, if he was a real personality, so he founded brand new religion, that is Christianity. Here in Jerusalem, as the capital of Roman province Judea, Jesus was crucified, and here on the hill called Golgotha, he was carrying this cross, and he was also buried in here. And in the place where he was buried, later on there was a tomb built, and also kind of a chapel, and later on the church. I forgot to show you one interesting thing. I believe I can find it very quickly. So it's again National Geographic reconstruction. Let's see, reconstruction of the Church of Holy Sepulchre. Holy Sepulchre znamená Boží hrob, and it was a place, according to the tradition, that they believed reconstruction. Yeah, that's the one. That's the picture of in Pinterest. So maybe we can find something else. Okay, so maybe we can open this Jerusalem itself. So the point is that at the beginning, the place where he was crucified was kind of these Okay, this is a really nice one. Okay, so we don't have to open the other one. So according to tradition, he was crucified. He was crucified, and his body was stored in a tomb that was in a big quarry near Jerusalem, behind the fortification. And later on, after 3 days, you know that he appeared again, like resurrected, and people believe that he is the messenger of God or demigod itself. And in this way, Christianity was established. So as you see, this is very nice. I have to really add it in here. Thing. So later on, Romans, when they accepted Christian faith, so they start to build various temples upon it. And later, when Christianity was built, this late period of Roman Empire, the tomb itself was covered by a small tent, and a rotund was built, and a temple nearby the church, and so on. And gradually, during the histories, as you see, it's already our period. So this Holy Sepulchre was actually a small church, but one of the holiest places, because that was a place of resurrection of Jesus Christ. Later on, of course, there were various rebuildings of it. Okay, but there are more into how Holy Sepulchre looks today, which is actually a very small one. So thanks National Geographic for this one, and we shall add this link in here. Okay, so let's make it a bit smaller, thicker, and the color would be a different one. Sorry. Okay, give me some time, guys. Please. Which is a good one. Okay, this is a good one, and also we change this color into this one. Okay, it doesn't work anymore, so let's have it in here, and animation. Okay, so this Holy Sepulchre became actually the another holy place for another second religion. So those Jews, for example, were coming to Jerusalem to pray in the Solomon's temple. That was the only part of the only synagogue, real sacred synagogue in the world. And also Christians started coming to Jerusalem to pray at Golgotha and the Church of Holy Sepulchre. But that was not the end, because there was another religion that was established from these two ones, and that was, of course, Islam. And when, after the conquest, after the death of Muhammad himself, he claimed that this Muslim conquest should go on from Mecca, Medina to Jerusalem itself, because if you remember, Islam is actually derivation of Judaism and Christianity, and for Muhammad, even Jesus was one of the prophets of Islam, and even they believe in archangels and the same God. Actually, Allah is the God. So this Jewish and Christian God at the same time. So for them, Jerusalem and even Holy Sepulchre was one of the places of their prophets for them. So together with these two towns, Mecca, Medina, Jerusalem became the third holy town for Muslims, and later on also Samarkand became the other. And also the remains of Muhammad, his bones, were divided into 4 parts and stored in mosques in these 4 cities. So even in Jerusalem, in a mosque called Al-Aqsa, in here, it's one of these most sacred places for Muslims. And during the history, this part already was actually part of Islamic Caliphate, of course, but you know that later on it got dissoluted. One of the nations that destroyed this Arabic Caliphate, also Byzantine Empire, later on, were Seljuk Turks, who were coming from these Caspian Sea regions and conquering actually this northern parts of Middle East. And at the time, in what we talk about in 11th century, Seljuk Turks, they made two big expansions. One was quest of these eastern parts of Byzantine Empire with Syria and Turkey. At the Battle of Manzikert in 1071, they defeated Byzantine armies, who actually were happy to stop Seljuk Turks somewhere in the middle of Anatolia in these parts there. But still, for Byzantine, Seljuk Turks were very big and dangerous empire. These Seljuks, they actually created their own sultanate. The sultan is kind of like emperor or the king for the Turks, and they call it the Sultanate of Rome because Constantinople, from their point of view, was still called like Eastern Rome or Eastern Roman Empire, so they called it the Sultanate of Rome. That's in Turkish language, you will see that. And this Sultanate of Rum was actually fighting against Arabic countries in the south because Turks are no Arabs. So these two Muslim armies were fighting actually for this territory of Middle East. For both of them, Jerusalem was an important one. So this battlefield during these decades of 11th century, Palestine became the battlefield of two Muslim armies. Soon, armies of Western European nobles joined the conflict, and how it happened. Age of Chivalry, we talked about it a couple of times with Age of Tournament. So the first Crusade, how it started in 1095, and how got these Western European knights and dukes and princes involved in this Muslim warfare. The point was, again, Byzantine Empire that was still very unhappy about the danger from the Seljuk Turks. For this kind, there was the emperor called Alexios, and he got an idea that it may be interesting after the years and decades of arguments and fights between Eastern and Western Church, after the Great Schism that happened in 1054. So at the time, the Pope of Roman Catholic Western Church was Urban II. This guy was really great diplomat and ambassador, and had actually good political skills. And Alexios decided to write him a letter and send emissaries to him, in which he asked Pope Urban II to help him against the fight against Seljuk Turks. He said that actually there is a bigger enemy in the east than they themselves, so what to do with them. And he mentioned that actually after the fall of Byzantine Empire, they should soon invade Italy and the other countries. Urban II found this request as a good moment, that this can be actually good even for building his own power. But the problem was that he couldn't proclaim told the people let's fight for your enemies, for Byzantines, for Eastern Christians, for some distant lands about 3,000 kilometers away. So he decided to summon a council, další církevný koncil, in the city in France, in Clermont. Here in Clermont, he summoned not only the bishops and archbishops, the clergy, who usually sat and disputed at the councils, but he also summoned high nobility from lands of Francia, so in France, from Holy Roman Empire, from England, and so on. And he actually gave a couple of speeches there, and the biggest one that we have also preserved in a whole text, that some people wrote it down, or maybe it was. So let's have a look at this speech of Urban II. Yeah, we got it in here. Okay, we'll see whether it's documentary or the original text. Okay, so there is some text. Okay, but we don't want this spot. We want another thing. We got original text, full text. Maybe source and for them. Okay. More beloved brethren, urged by necessity, I, Urban, by the permission of God, Chief Bishop and Prelate over the whole world, and so on. This speech is among one of the most famous rhetoric speeches that had been ever given to people, to the crowds. And those who are in the debate club, you should definitely read it, because it's not only like great claim, but also great rhetoric speech, in which the last words, the last paragraph, was losing in the shouts and cries of people who, in fanatic tremor, were calling up arms to go for the Holy Land and kill Muslims. It was not actually only to kill Muslims, but only for deliberation of Holy Sepulchre. This is something that I need to tell you, that one thing he couldn't tell it like let's help Byzantines, but he said that actually, guys, there is Holy Sepulchre being ruled and conquered and desecrated by Muslims, by pagans, and let's go there and let's deliberate this tomb of Jesus Christ. Actually, it was fun, not fun, but interesting thing that Europeans at the time didn't have an idea that Holy Sepulchre has been conquered by Muslims for about like 400 years, so, and actually they were protecting it for more of the lands, but that was not important. For Urban II, it was important to mobilize and summon as many people as possible to go there to Holy Land and to go and fight them. So in this way to help Byzantines. Actually, Urban II didn't mean that also Byzantines would be like great guys to help. So at the same way, he said that's going to be actually a good possibility to spread Roman Catholicism to the East and even to Byzantine empires. For the participation at this crusade, the Pope promised to forgive all sins, and he also shared place in the heavens. So in this way, people suddenly had, okay, if we go somewhere behind the hill, behind the river Rhine, let's say, behind over the Alps, so maybe there is this holy land, and let's fight, and all the sins shall be forgiven. So for many people, it was really great, and many people found it like really internal, personal dedication to this task. Couple of pictures, of course, we don't have any videos in here. So here the Pope at Clermont giving speech to the not only to nobility but also to the crowd. So in this way, of course, nobility who had chance to go there and to fight, where they had to get ready. So in this way, many people, especially poor people, they come on, like, what are we waiting for? Let's go and take it. So they had no idea about the size, the distances, So one preacher, one wandering monk called Peter the Hermit, Peter Pustovnik. So he started to organize those crowds of poor people with only seven knights who had some weapons. And together he had like a crowd of 100,000 people who start marching to the east. And this so-called People's Crusade was kind of a prelude to the First Crusade. It's incredible that they could march across Germany, plundering everything. They entered the Kingdom of Hungary. At that time, we had the King Kalman, or Koloman the Bookworm, Koloman Knihomor, for one of the great kings of Kingdom of Hungary. And because they were plundering everything, so Hungarians we attacked them. So they barely escaped from Hungary down to the south, and for the attacks, this crowd decided to attack the southern fortress of Kingdom of Hungary, Beograd, today capital of Serbia. And they actually annihilated the garrison. They corpses there, and Koloman's army came actually a bit late. When they crossed Byzantine territories, borders, so of course they had spies all around, so they knew that this uncontrolled, unorganized crowd is coming in here, so they prepared army and they prepared supplies for them, so they didn't need to plunder it. And they actually accompanied them to Constantinople across the Balkans. It was a big surprise. Alexios didn't expect this like uneducated, like fanatic crowd without arms and weapons, but they said they're messengers of God and Pope himself. So okay, gave us some weapons and sent them to the Seljuk territories, and of course in the first battle they were crushed down, they all were defeated and killed. So this prelude was interesting, but it was still like a nice example how fanaticism persuades people to go like 3,000 kilometers away, followed by the leader, by one guy who can manipulate them. These illustrations are from very famous painter Gustave Doré, who made like a whole series of huge paintings and black and white, not paintings, but graphic engravings about the First Crusade in here. The other thing that followed, The other thing that followed after this proclamation was that people couldn't recognize Muslims from any other religions, and in Europe there were another religious group present, and they were Jews. And despite Jesus himself was a Jew, the Europeans couldn't recognize them from Muslims. and they started with killing, with riots that we today call pogroms. Pogrom as a name appeared late in the beginning of 20th century, and it means that people are attacking and killing and burning down the settlements of Jews and actually killing them without any serious reason. This persecution of Jews and pogroms happened in Rhineland, so the territory between Germany and France, but also in Bohemia, also here in Slovakia, when the first crusade was passing by Bratislava, Komárno, so there were some pogroms in Pezinok, in Bratislava, and also in Topolčany. Again, actually, also they accuse them of Jesus' death, but you know that it's incredible. So this picture depicting this first pogroms already at the Crusade. So somebody says that there hadn't been hostilities before Holocaust. That's absolutely not true. The other thing that the Crusaders saw themselves as warriors, the soldiers of Jesus himself, and it didn't bring actually brand new thing, but this violence was common in also this chivalric age. So as you can see in this picture, they saw themselves, Knights Templars especially, as Jesus is leading them with reading words from the Bible and holding a sword between his teeth and having red eyes. So this doesn't look like this Jesus the Savior and so on. Okay, now probably didn't have any problems to fill those maps with information I asked from you. You may be angry that you have to fill it with colors like elementary school students, but the point is somewhere else that I'm giving you right now, I'm giving you information and to visualize it, to make it like remember, to get idea about geography and how it moved on and how also the situation during the Crusades was changing, where actually the roots of all these armies. Traditional campaign usually started somewhere in France, across Germany. It led along the Danube River because that was the easiest one, crossing Bulgaria, coming to Constantinople, and very harsh route across the mountains of Anatolia down to Middle East. Some of the countries or some of the crusaders who had chance and access to the sea and they had navy, so they preferred, of course, sailing, taking the boat because it was much cheaper. They could carry much more load. So the only means of transportation. So those who came from England, from Normandy, from Toulouse, or from southern territories of Vermandois, or from the Kingdom of Sicily, so these guys were taking ships. So the first campaign was led by no kings. There were no kings who joined it. They decided not to join it, but there were dukes and princes from various principalities and towns. Some were small, some big. So as I mentioned, from Normandy, they were very powerful. From France, from Vermandois and Toulouse, from Burgundy, the same thing, from Lotharingia. These guys were speaking French, of course, but there were many German-speaking dukes and lords who joined this, like with small groups, sometimes by themselves, sometimes bigger principalities. As I mentioned, so by the sea, actually English, because this is the 1095. So they were actually like grandsons of William the Conqueror, still calling themselves Normans. The other Normans from Italy, so apart from Sicilian Normans, even some other Italian towns, then some guys from Belgium, which we call Flanders, or from Flemish, and actually from the Sicily. When these English Normans were having boats sailing, so they made a stop in Naples, and they met with the Sicilian Norman king Tancred, and Roger, I can't remember right now, and they asked him, so let's join us, and he said, no, it sounds really crazy, but actually know that we Normans, your cousins, we understand that we have this adventurous nature, so I shall not make obstacles to anybody from my army who would like to join you. And 70 of Sicilian Normans decided to join these guys, and they sailed together and followed in these lands, especially the siege of Antiochia. The 70 guys became very famous, and I explain later when we come to the county or principality of Edessa. This was much better organized, and also when they crossing Hungary, our king welcomed them, helped them, gave them supplies. Also coming to Constantinople, Alexios was really happy because now this time he saw about like 100,000 armed men. They were organized, well trained. It was nobility, so he was really happy. Actually, the first things appeared to be problem when Alexios welcomed the leaders, commanders, and asked them, "Okay, you came to help us, Byzantine Empire, and if you, when you cross the Seljuk territories and conquer them, it will be actually the liberation of Byzantine lands for me. So you should pay oath of loyalty, like vassal promise, oath of vassals, of loyalty to them." And they were surprised because they didn't expect it, and they believed that all these lands would be either theirs, what many of them believe they can like found new lands for themselves, or for the Pope itself. So they were actually big arguments, but still not fighting. So Alexios let them go. Some of them promised so the loyalty, but most of them didn't. Still, this army followed to Nicaea and then followed and crossed the Seljuk territories. And now they had a lot of wars, but this army was too big for Seljuk Turks, who really didn't have chance or didn't have any power to stop them. So there were some small skirmishes until they got to the city of Antioch or Antiochia. Here, this fortress, this town, let's have a look how it looks today, because it's still really famous. It's city stored in Syria, Antiochia. Okay, so it was, this city was built. The city was built in times of ancient Greece, and as you see that today still there are remains of not only of ancient Greek town and Hellenistic and later Roman town, but even big medieval town with great fortifications, and the city itself was one of the biggest of the Byzantine Empire. And its size didn't allow Crusaders to besiege Antiochia all around. Actually, this is different place that we need only the harbor, but Antiochia is a bit far further from the sea. So now these territories around, as you can see, they were more like not desert, but not very fertile anymore, not like in Neolithic period. And Crusaders who came here, there was a big Seljuk, not Seljuk, but Arabic garrison, and they believe they can actually manage. So let's have a look maybe at some pictures. Siege of Antiochia, and then we will see this of Antioch. Okay, so this will be all only like depiction, like of course a bit different. Maybe this seems to be, but it looks like. Okay, you see the town was really big, really huge one, and when Crusaders came here, they realized they don't have enough men to besiege it all. So they tried to besiege it, but still many gates were open, which allowed Arabs to, when some of the gates not protected very well, and gather some food, and again coming back, attack some like weak place in siege, and got back to the town. In this way, it took them 8 months to close the city completely and to starve defenders. So there was nothing to eat, according to the chronicles. There were people eating actually skin from the trees, and digging sand and wood on these earthworms and eating them bugs. So the biggest problem was actually the water. So finally, when they gave up, when they surrendered, so Crusaders got quickly into the town, very happy that they seized it, but there was no any food. And at that moment, the joint army of Seljuk Turks from Edessa and the Kurdish armies and also Caliph of Baghdad came to Antioch, about the size of 50,000 men. It was not bigger than Crusades. Actually, many of them had already died, but still like too big to clash in open battle. And they again locked Crusaders in Antioch. And what happened further on? Now Crusaders spending a couple of days in Antioch and dying of hunger, thousands of them dying of hunger. During after like 1 week, or maybe 1 week, one soldier from French duchy of Vermandois, Peter the Bartholomew, came with his friends to see his lord, Hugo of Vermandois, and he told him that since they entered Antioch every night, he's having a dream. In this dream, an archangel, Michael, appears to him and leads him across the street of Antiochia. So in his dream, he's walking in a dark city. He sees everything, but there is archangel leading him to one small church, one small Byzantine church. They enter it, and in this church he showed him beneath the altar, here is the place where the Holy Lance is buried. Holy Lance, guys, was one of the most precious artifacts in Christianity. It is the tip or iron tip of the spear that Roman soldier Longinus stabbed Jesus on the cross, and making one of stigmas. You know that stigmas were the wounds that Jesus suffered from wearing the crown of thorns, then the nails, of course, and also this stab between the ribs. And because this holy lance still got like the blood of Jesus, sangre de Cristo, so it is one of the most sacred artifacts. During the history, people or the Christians tried to collect any artifacts from the life of Jesus, and this was one of the coolest. And in this dream, Archangel Michael told this Bartholomew that there is Holy Lance here in Antiochia. So Hugo Vermandois, of course, and he was scared to tell the others because he thought that he may be possessed by devil or something like that. And but when he told it, so his friends persuaded him, "Do you have to tell it? Maybe it's a message from a God that we shall win, and we have this ultimate weapon that gives us faith to win for the victory." So in this way, Hugo, he summoned all the noblemen from France and the Holy Roman Empire, and actually Peter Bartholomew found this church, and they got in and started digging. After like half an hour, they dug a big hole, but nothing was found. So angry lords from German lands, from Holy Roman Empire, left the church. Only French lords remained there. And what happened? That still they were digging, and when nothing happened, Peter Bartholomew jumped to the pit himself, and after a while, he was holding rusty tip of this ancient Roman spear. And so of course for Crusaders, it meant the message from the God, despite German Crusaders said that probably Peter Bartholomew laid it by himself only to have it, but still it was a great message for Crusaders who believe it's a message from a God that is on their side. Despite starving and dying of hunger, they actually ran out of the gates of Antiochia and opened the gates, and early in the morning, when Muslim army realized like fanatic crazy crusaders running at them with some like artifact and claiming that the God is ours, God is on our side, so they were scared and they ran away. So that God was the same one for both armies. So this very interesting siege of Antiochia depicts the mentality of medieval people and the fanaticism at the same time, but also dedicated faith they had. Actually, if you counted how many Holy Lances survived Crusade, that would be about 7 pieces, and also other artifacts that people collected, like piece of wood from Holy Cross, a piece of clothes, this fabric from Torino, with like face of Jesus, like from a photocopy, fax copy center, or like bones, and somebody counted that there are so many of these reliquia, holy relics in the churches from England to Hungary, that Jesus should have, or Virgin Mary should have, like 70 fingers and 40 heads and many other things. Okay, let's move on. What happened? As you see, approximately only 30,000 Crusaders marched from Antiochia to Tripoli, down to Lebanon and to Israel, to Holy Land. And there is some shows. So clergy participating in open warfare, you know it already. Okay, finally, Holy Land is the territory of Israel where Jesus himself was living and traveling from Nazareth, Bethlehem, Jerusalem, of course. So for them it was finally like dedication. 30,000 men, not enough maybe to break down the walls of Jerusalem protected by Arabic, now this time Arabic army. You know, every day there's one year there were Arabic soldiers, the other Seljuk Turks. Every time they were just banishing the others, but there was no like serious killing. When Crusaders came, after 3 months of siege, uh, they needed help from the Republic of Venice. Excuse me. There was this. Sorry. So Republic of Venice had to bring them some wood for building besieged towers, and thanks to them, they could actually cross the fortification and enter the city. In a fanatic bloodlust they had, so they start to kill everybody they met. Didn't matter whether they were like Muslims or Jews or even Eastern Orthodox Christians, even Catholics, you know, dressed in different styles, so it started killing anybody. You know, people are hiding in the churches, they didn't mind, and they kill like people, women, children in the churches. And the chronicle said that they were actually in the morning after this massacre that Crusaders committed in Jerusalem. There were brooks of blood flowing in Jerusalem up to people's knees. So that was also a thing that Muslims realized, that those people who came here probably were not like faithful believers, or the God they are fighting for is not the God they want. So the worst army in here were themselves. Okay, what happened? So this is description of maybe the army of the character, so you can read it. I'm not going to tell you everything I have in here because there are many important things. So I think I told you everything. Yeah, this was the brave and fanatic due to religious faith. Their disadvantage what was they were in small numbers. Many of them came back to Europe, and those who stayed here, so they had to build big castles to defend their lands, but also to organize new crusades, because this was only possible thing how to get more and more armies. You know, when you are like 12 people in your army, you can't like control it, die by one. You know. Still, Arabs call them Franks. Generally, you know, many people in stereotype think that every Arab is a Muslim or every Muslim is Arab, which is not true. Just like they believe that we all white people are Christians, the same true. At that time, that's why Arabs simplified it and called all these European knights Franks. Muslims, on the other hand, were different, again about weaponry. So their ethnicity, they were, of course, Arabs from Syria, Iraq, Egypt, but in the northern parts, especially Seljuk Turks. Still, there were many people living there from various ethnicities, from Jews, Hebrews, Armenians, and Kurds, and so on. Islam also motivated them in their fight. However, Muslims were at the time much more tolerant than Christians. And actually, if you ever met Muslims in this way, actually, they are open-minded to Christians and Jews. Because they suppose them to be the people of the world, but of course there are fanatics in both sides. Okay, a couple of pictures of Muslim cavalry. Imagine a clash of Muslim Crusaders cavalry. It was impossible for them, that they actually avoided this direct clash, so they usually like rode their horses around and start shooting arrows at them and clash only sometimes. Okay, Arabic depiction of Franks. Okay, you see that completely different things, but also their flowers. Okay, what followed? When Jerusalem was conquered, so these Crusaders took it, not that these territories are coming back to Byzantine Empire, they all gave only small parts, let's say the island of Cyprus, as you can see. But here, for example, they allowed local Armenians to create their own small kingdom of Cilicia. Armenians were living in these territories, as you see Seljuk Sultanate of Rum in here, but there were 4 Crusader states created. Some of them were created on their way down to Holy Land. So it was Principality of Antiochia, the county of Tripoli in Lebanon, and the kingdom of Jerusalem. The 4th one is the county of Edessa, Grosto Edeske, which is in northern Iraq. And this is an interesting story about the 70 Normans that I told you. there. While sieging Antiochia for 8 months, they needed a lot of food. So very often, some of the troops went on like rampaging campaigns to other towns and cities, sometimes even hundreds of kilometers away, to get food and supplies. Once the 70 Sicilian Normans were actually bored during the siege of of Antiochia, and they traveled much further than to Aleppo in Syria, and they actually got to northern Iraq, to the territories where even today Kurds are living. Kurds are not Arabs, Kurds are not Turks, and they were fighting both of them. They came to the capital city of Edessa, today near Mosul. And when the 70 knights came, so they saw the city and waving flags, with crescent and stuff. So they asked locals, some Kurds, so who dwells in the town? Kurds, we, Edessians. And who rules in the town? Who are your lords? Actually Turks. And do you like them? No, actually they are occupants. So if we attack the city, so probably there wouldn't be any resistance from the locals. Absolutely not, but that would be crazy thing. But still, Sicilians were Normans, these legendary heroic acts of their forefathers from Viking times. So 70 mounted knights from Sicily just attacked and stormed the gate of Edessa, 50,000 population city, and actually broke the gate when surprised Seljuk garrison was coming, gathering from all the city, tried to fight some crazy Christians trying to enter the town, but they were killing them. And when Kurds realized that there is some small squad of Christians attacking, crazy Christians attacking the gate and liberating them from Seljuk Turks, so they joined them. And they actually killed these about 2,000 men Seljuk garrison. In this way, 70 Sicilian Normans conquered and liberated 50,000 populated city of Edessa, who allowed them, as traditionalist Vikings, Normans, to be their counts. And they proclaimed to be Christians. They were actually very tolerant and ruled in these whole territories, and actually managed to survive for almost 1 century as their rulers. Of course, from the eyes of Muslims, these guys were occupants, occupying these lands of Iraq for Christians. And Kingdom of Jerusalem. As you see, the kings of Jerusalem had to be elected, but immediately there were many arguments who should be there. Finally elected was and chosen by the Pope was Balduin the First, who was from Toulouse. From this French dynasty. Of course, that means that also many kings following him were called Balduin. It became a typical name for that. Okay, what else? Still there were Muslim states around these Crusader states, for they had to fight for. So there was whole Seljuk Empire, as you can see, all these great green lands in here. Still in the south, there were these Arabic lands of Fatimid Caliphate, the Fatimosky Caliphate. Fatimids or Fatimods was a dynasty house ruling from Baghdad and also from Cairo. And from Rosetta, that was capital of Egypt of those times. Both these Muslim empires trying to fight them. Of course, Sultanate of Rome, and also there was one small sect of so-called assassins, or the word assassin, attentatnik, or the Assassin's Creed computer game. What happened in the mountains of Lebanon, between Syria and Lebanon, and Golan Highlands, these lands were occupied by crusaders, by bishops, and so on. But many Muslims, of course, refused this rule. And there was one sheikh living in those mountains. They call him the old man from the mountains, Tarazwar, who tried to organize some armies, but they were not. He couldn't build it. So he decided to use different tactics. And at times he tried to recruit young, brave men who were dedicated in their faith and tried to prepare them for great attacks, especially like hidden, almost I would call it terrorist or assassin way of killing, let's say, bishops and lords of crusaders and grandmasters, only like the big targets. And that were kind of like special missions, so they had to be really excellent warriors. And also, usually you die during these missions. So these people had to be really dedicated to the god. These suicidal attacks were not common at those times. So it is said that this sheikh, before the mission, he was giving these assassins to smoke hashish. And that's why when they went on the when they went on the mission, so they were actually drugged and they were in their mood and so on, and that made them also not like not minding to die, not mind to die. So in this way, they start to call these guys hashashin, like hash smokers, and actually this Arabic word hash smokers became hashashin, assassin, became the synonym for the killer, for the attentatnik. So actually the Assassins was a real sect that was fighting Crusaders in these lands of Lebanon against for the deliberation. Okay, still there were Christian states, of course, Byzantine Empire and this Armenian Cilicia, and was the situation, how it lasted for centuries. Now I ask you to give me other things that I don't mention, so that is some kind of extra thing for you. So Muslims seized dominance again, so the Second Crusade had to be organized. It was not very successful, so those lords who joined it, so they had clutched in a couple of battles, and when they collected enough relics to bring them back home, so people praised them and bishops and church praised them. Yeah, you're coming back like a great hero. It was important thing for them. No more, no deliberation. So in this way, also the first king joined this crusade, and it was King of Bohemia Vladislaus II of Przemysl dynasty. At the end of the Second Crusade, Muslims were finally united, Turks, Kurds and Arabs, by Great Caliph of Baghdad, Salah ad-Din, or simplifiedly called Saladin. And finally, in 1187, he managed to recapture Jerusalem and became a great hero. Also, when he captured Jerusalem, it was not like when Crusaders came there and they killed all the population, but he actually allowed to leave the city those who were rich only for paying ransom, and those who also, when they conquered the town, he opened the gates that those who don't want to live under us, under our rule, you can leave the town freely. So many Christians abandoned the town, but he proved to be actually better, chivalric man, honest man, proud man, in this way, better knight than Crusaders themselves. That's why he became a great hero for all Muslim and Arabic lands. There are statues being built like in many Arabic countries. Egypt had this Salahuddin eagle in their coat of arms and so on. So great hero, and also Christians remembered him as a great guy, and also that's why this capturing of Jerusalem became by Saladin became the main scene of probably the only good movie, that is here in Hollywood, or maybe like movie production, and that is The Kingdom of Heaven with Orlando Bloom. Probably you've seen it all. You all saw this movie, so let's have a look at some trailer. Probably it was being loaded. Okay, so let's have a look. If you didn't see it, it's a story that actually it's a fictional story of a real historical personality of Balian the Ibelin, who was not the blacksmith from France, a bastard, but he was a real nobleman who came to Holy Land, and he was living for many years in Holy Land, and he was the captain of the garrison of Jerusalem while being defended. Of course, Hollywood made this movie that lost son of great Crusaders, Knights Johannits, all the, I will show you also this guy coming in here, but watch the movie. It's actually historically, it seems to be, of course, like a fictional story, but the depiction of Jerusalem, the kingdom of Jerusalem, of these Crusader states, how they lived, is really cool. Also the clothes they wore, they were wearing, and even the battle, the warfare in here. It's Kingdom of Jerusalem was with their coats of arms, if you remember, was the only in apart from the popes, the papal state, that could bury different lands. Okay, too much talking, not enough okay, warfare, but this was really nice and cool. And Salah Siege of Jerusalem, that was really nice battle scenes and so on. Actually, probably in my opinion, the only good movie about the Crusades. When I was actually looking for some movies to give you the things about, so I found plenty of Robin Hood movies, very old movies, or parodies or some like low budget European movies. Not at all. Actually, Siedma Pečati, the Seventh Seal, is a good one, but more like philosophical, and the others are not very cool. So maybe documentaries, maybe better ones. Okay, let's go back. Let's move on because we got only like 8 minutes to go. So what we followed is that when Saladin seized Jerusalem in 1187, the Third Crusade had to be organized. This is the last time I'm going to tell you about the Third Crusade. I've told you so many times, and this is the famous with Friedrich Barbarossa, the Emperor of Holy Roman Empire, that forced great kings of France and England, Philip II August against Richard the Lionheart, and 3 armies marching down to Holy Land to recapture Jerusalem. But Friedrich Barbarossa died on the way. They were drowned in the river, and this great German army had to come back to Europe in chaos. English and French then fought in Levant by themselves. That each army fought separately. Sometimes they fought each other. Actually, Philip the August, he came back soon to Europe, so only Richard the Lionheart remained in Holy Land, but he was fighting, not caring about anything, losing his armies. Actually, during one battle, he clashed with Saladin, and in here, when the English were so small numbers, they created a shield wall around. For a couple of hours, Muslims couldn't broke it, so when Muslims proclaimed there is a break in a battle, Saladin sent a messenger to Richard the Lionheart that he's inviting him for a lunch. So Richard the Lionheart, as a king and a knight, he believed that he's not going to kill him. So he, with his bodyguards, he came to the Muslim camp. They were having a lunch together. They gave each other some beautiful gifts. Okay, and then Richard came back to his camp, and the battle went on. At the evening, English suffered so many casualties that Saladin released them after paying some more money. You know that. Actually, he lost almost all his army, and he was captured on the way back home by Austrian Archduke Leopold, and that caused this Magna Carta Libertatum and creation of parliamentary kingdom in England. So not very successful, but still very popular king. Probably no other king had so many movies shot about himself. The other thing, how they help each other, you also may see it in the movie, is establishing of monastic knight orders, were organized in 3 times. They were the so-called Johannites, the house of St. John the Baptizer in Jerusalem. These knights, or Maltese knights, tried to build up similar monastic system as monks had in monasteries, but instead of praying and writing books, they were fighting against Muslims, but they were living in chastity and in poverty, and their only task was to protect the Holy Sepulchre tomb and protect the pilgrims coming to Holy Land. These Johannites dwelt in the castle Markov, the second biggest castle in the world. Mostly they were Johannites, and they were actually building hospitals around, taking care of those pilgrims, and they were called Hospitallers. Today it's a charity organization, so-called the Maltese Knights. The other was the Order of the Temple of Solomon, Rad Chramu Šalamunovho, who called themselves the Knights Templars. You know these guys very well from all the stories around and legends. They were mostly French, and dwelled in the biggest castle in the world in Syria, in Krak de Chevalier, the other Kerak in the movie too. I'm hunting for 3 minutes, but probably I will need another lesson for you guys. So if I'm not going to finish it all, just keep it on. Maybe I can have some revision. The last temple, also the last order that you also know very well, were the brothers of the German house of St. Mary of Jerusalem, čiže bratia nemeckého domu svätej Panny Márie v Jeruzaleme, who were called Teutonic Knights, or older German Knights. They dwelt in Montfort of Starkenberg Castle, but you know that they moved away from Holy Land to Germany and fought against pagan Slavs and Baltic lands, establishing the Teutonic Order in the northern Baltic. So Templars, typical for their red crosses on white shields, the most famous at all. They're seal with 2 riders on the horse. Probably this is the best depiction of Crusader I can imagine. The guy covering this, not Arabic scarf, you have this chain heavy armor, so in the hot sun you cannot fight in it. So just like Arabs, they were covering their armors with scarves, and of course they were not rich guys, despite Philip IV believed he was. Crac des Chevaliers, the biggest castle in the world, built by Knights Templars in Syria to defend their lands because they had no men enough. Actually, the civil war in Syria started with uprising against President Assad, and the last rebels were hiding in this castle Crac des Chevaliers, and there were fights for about 1 week only in the castle itself. So that was the beginning of Syrian war. Yeah, they saw themselves like great guys fighting, in the vampires, in this beautiful illumination. German knights, Maltese knights, even in Maltese flag got these crosses. I'm going to tell you more, guys, next time, probably in the second half, and I will start also the other topic, the Kingdom of Hungary. Takže budeme pokračovať na budúce. Zvyšné tieto krížové výpravy prebehnem už veľmi rýchlo. Myslím, že vám to akurát tak aj vydá na vaše áno, chcem skontrolovať, áno, chcem kompatibilitu, ďakujem. No a v podstate budeme ďalej potom hneď pokračovať stredovekými dejinami Uhorska. No a tam mám pre vás pripravené trošku iné zadanie, ako poznáte, a myslím, že prvýkrát budete robiť to, čo už štvrtáci dobre poznajú, a to budete robiť test. Čiže namiesto nejakého zadania normálne vyrobíte písomku, no ale to si samozrejme preberiem potom pri slovenských stredovekých uhorských dejinách. Každopádne chcem vám inak povedať, že meškáme celkovo, ale je to kvôli tomu, že v podstate hodiny sú skrátené asi na polovicu, o 1/3, takže preto aj to v podstate takto vychádza, že už sme dávno mali byť niekde na zámorských objavoch, možno proti tureckých vojnách. Dobre, to je z mojej strany všetko, hodinu ja nebudem naťahovať, aj keď mám ešte tých 5 minút, ale v podstate tak či tak by som to nestíhal. Dobre, to je z mojej strany všetko, decka, nezabudnite, že som vám zadal úlohu, že to som vám zadal teda otázku na zistenie absencie, čiže kto mi nereagoval, tak už tam máte tú absenciu a určite vám ju neospravedlním, pretože hodinu ste mali počúvať od začiatku a v podstate viete, o čo sa jedná. Dobre, to je z mojej strany všetko, decka, na dnes, takže enjoy the weekend alebo next week, ak už pozeráte ďalšie trieda z záznamu. No a to je všetko. So have a nice day and stay negative and positive in mind. Bye bye.